January 27th. And just a reminder, we're not voting on anything tonight, just discussing items that will be on Tuesday's agenda. So, first up, we have meetings from the regular February meeting, February 4th. Has everyone had a chance to review those? Okay.
Mayor,
yes.
There's one item on here that I just want to make sure that I worded it correctly. So if you all would kind of look at that before Tuesday night, and if you have any recommendations on changes or anything, just let me know.
Okay.
We have a discussion for this.
Okay, and then also the meetings for the special call, minutes for the special call meeting on February 20th. Those are separate.
And Mayor, same comment on that one as well.
Okay. Is it in regard to the billboard signage?
Both items, the signage and the concessions.
Okay.
Didn't we vote on that ordinance to amend Article 4?
The signage? Yeah. These are the minutes.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out where we voted. It doesn't seem to be on there.
Are you looking where it says motion by Carl Kincaid?
Yeah.
Second by Scott Glover, Terry
Oh,
Tyson.
Carrie. Okay, sorry. I just expected to see.
I thought on the verbiage for the Bombers, it was 4-1.
It was 3-2.
Okay. Okay.
The bid was 3-2.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Did you change it? Did you change it? Okay.
This was my fault. When we were asked to vote, I was not, my voice didn't carry.
Oh, okay.
And
Just for idle curiosity, who did you prefer? Just
James A. Johnson.
Okay. Fair enough.
Okay, any other questions about the minutes?
We should just, since that came up, we should have an agreement in about a week, so for us to look at.
For the concession stand, yes, okay.
That's in progress.
Okay. Because it is already in use.
Yeah, I mean, it was memorializing the bid, so
Okay.
there was a bid, we're going with that as determined.
Okay, so the next item that will be on the agenda is the January 2025 financial statements.
We are looking pretty good. We want to be right around 59%. We would like for our revenues to be above that and expenditures to be below. Nothing out of the ordinary except for, again, pointing out the police department, the cars. That's why that one's at 97.7% in the expenditures. And those are in, where we received the money for that, is in miscellaneous. And that put us at like 757% above. So those are just ones that I wanted to point out. Past that, we have our spreadsheet. So total fiscal interest earned has been $55,172.76. And total earned, since it's been in there, is $137,202.25. Our balance right now is $1,937,210.85, which is reflected on the local government investment full statement on the back.
It does appear that our interest rate is coming down. the multi-use pad gonna be?
So we had a meeting last week, or earlier this week. Construction drawings are 98% done. There are 5 easements that we're seeking. We have agreements on 4. We're lacking an agreement on 1. So once we get that, and we had added a temporary construction easement to that particular parcel. So once we get agreement on that, we'll be ready to soon go out for bid.
Who's the lone handhold? I mean, I know some guys.
I'll be glad to tell you. We'll talk about it after the meeting. I'll let you know.
Okay, any other questions or comments about the financial statement? No, if not, we will move on to under codes and permits. So we will discuss the first reading of the rezoning request for parcel map 96, parcel 1606 from R1 to R3. This is the piece of property that was considered like a donut, the one that was not
Just still in the
officially-
county, but right within that subdivision.
Okay. Amanda, you have any comments?
Yes, this is, just as Attorney Hill said, this is donut hole, and as you indicated as well. This is a property that was recently annexed into the town and is under the mandatory R1 zoning designation. The property owner is now requesting an R3 zoning designation to be consistent with the zoning that's around the rest of the property. The Planning Commission considered this at their February meeting and recommended the rezoning positively.
Question, maybe I'm not looking at the colors correctly, not very well could be. It looks like there's R2 around it, so it is R3, not R2?
It is R3.
All the way around it, other than that commercial?
Yes.
Okay.
The little vanilla box there is the property.
Correct.
Okay.
Not the whole big, it's just that little box right there.
This one.
In my picture, it looks like it's R1.
Yeah, it looks like it's R1 in my picture too. We got printer issues, okay, cool.
So that'll be first reading. So if it were to pass on Tuesday, there would be a public notice, public hearing, and second reading, I think April.
So the owners, they do not have to submit a plat at this point, correct?
Correct.
Because I know there was some concern about people trying to use Bell Circle to access Highway 70 based on that street, the existing street that's there.
So, this is at the rezoning phase, and I don't imagine they would submit a plat for this property. Though keeping in mind, under our new density standards, looking into the acreage for R3, the maximum dwelling units that could be on here is 2. In order for there to be, just going down a rabbit hole, in order for there to be an access from Bell Circle all the way to 70, they'd have to plat that. It would have to be intended to be a public road. They'd have to build the public road, and the town would have to accept the public road.
Okay.
Now, if someone wants to drive a four-wheeler across a vacant lot to get to 70, they can, but, that's trespassing, so.
Question, who's Phelps LLC? Do you know them?
Tennessee LLC.
I'm here representing them, so. We built the townhomes next door and the houses behind on Bell Circle, so.
But to Buckhorn Road, that's what we call a private drive. It's not a town street, so it would be an effort to make that happen.
Okay.
I'm curious as to why this is just coming up.
So the previous gentleman that developed Bell Circle tried to acquire that property and was unable to. No price was given, unwilling. From what I was told. So, after we got done essentially building the houses, they stuck up a sale sign on the yard. And we're like, okay, well, we just got done building the houses. We made an offer, and they accepted it. There's some title issues we worked through. I don't know the reluctance to sell to the previous
The
owner.
previous,
Edward Wayne Properties, Danny Williams, they're the ones that developed the circle.
Bell Circle,
Correct.
the owner of that property was blind.
that's what I meant, that circle.
In other words, Bell Circle actually just drives right in front of that lot.
Yeah, there's a 30-something feet that touches it based on how that was platted.
Okay, any other questions about it? Okay, so the next item is to discuss the first reading of an ordinance to amend section 3.110.14, the native and drought tolerant vegetation of Article 3 of the zoning ordinance. Would you like to discuss that as well? Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, this is a housekeeping item that in December of 2023, you all passed a native landscaping ordinance, landscaping screening and buffering requirements. The intent was to ensure that all required landscaping, screening, and buffering requirements will comprise of 50% or greater of native plants. Very quickly, there's a concern that there's a section of 3.110.1 parentheses 4 may be interpreted to apply only to landscaping and not the additional screening and buffering requirement as intended. So just to ensure that there's no ambiguity in the interpretation and the application of the section, we're requesting that the second sentence of that section be amended to read, therefore, all required landscaping, screening, and buffering requirements shall comprise of 50% or greater of native plants as defined in Article 2, Section 2.020. Just making it very clear that it applies to landscaping, buffering, and screening as well, not just landscaping.
Nipping any interpretation disputes in the bud.
Yes.
Have a question.
Very fine.
Do you have a list of native and drought tolerant vegetation?
We do. Yes, it's an amendment, it's an appendix to the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
It was from what y'all passed in December of '23, and we can send it to you. It's a extensive list.
I believe you. I don't remember seeing it, but that's good.
That was.
That would add some ambiguity. I'm asking this because my daughter and my daughter's boyfriend are both in this business of native plants. I'm just curious to how y'all made the list.
Sure. The list was actually given to us by one of our partners, Ms. Rosenthal, Deborah Rosenthal, who worked with the Tennessee Native Landscaping, or the Tennessee Native Plant Council. And she also did a lot of the legwork to work with our local nurseries to ensure that the plants that are allowable for planting are available, readily available, and in stock.
Very good. This is awesome.
Just a curiosity question, why would they go for plants that are outside the native? Cheaper?
Probably cheaper,
Gotcha.
more readily available.
What we previously passed also included some things about not using invasive species.
Yes.
And I think the good old Bradford pear has come up at the state level now that they're looking at banning the Bradford pear.
Yes.
Do you know if we addressed evergreens being used in overdensity? The only reason I say that is just from my previous experience in the industry. You know, a lot of times folks go with fast-growing evergreens that do a very nice barrier, but unfortunately they're susceptible to disease that are prevalent here in Tennessee, fire blight, swine canker, and the second you have an infection on one, it basically, you've got almost 100, I would not say 100, but it's almost 100% your entire blind is gonna get wiped out from that disease, because it's incredibly contagious. And so just making a reservation, if we build a community and they put up a bunch of these evergreens the moment they're infected, I mean, they'll grow up real nice, but the moment they're infected, they're gone. And when I was in the industry of treating them, you were anywhere from $100 to $500 to treat a tree, and at best case scenario, if you caught it soon enough, 50-50 shot you're saving the tree. So it's just kind of a death note. So I'm going, if we're allowing them to put in these types of trees, it's just a concern that you're going to end up with a bunch of dead trees, and the HOA doesn't want to replace them.
That's a great point. You all did write into the regulation that staff is allowed to administratively update the list, and I'm sure that would include any kind of, if there's a notice that comes down from the Native Plant Council, if there's any particular issue with disease or anything like the MONAP for example. That was an epidemic. I was the city manager of a city that had almost quite a large population of ash trees, and what do you do there? So it's kind of devastating to see that. But I'm sure that that's something that we'll be able to monitor closely, because that is a very valid concern.
It just concerns me, because I can't tell you how many neighborhoods I've been in quoting out jobs of trees that were designed to be blind. So.
Thank you for bringing that to the attention.
What y'all have done, just so it's clear, you've created 3 buckets. Yeah. Hey, here's your native bucket that's approved. Here's a bucket of things you can't use, and then you can't name everything. So everything else goes into that middle bucket, and you can only use up to 50% in that other bucket.
Is Western red cedar on your can't use bucket?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, sir. It's a very robust list.
Why would we use Western red?
I did not.
As opposed to Eastern red cedar?
I'm sorry.
Why would we use a Western red cedar as opposed to an Eastern red cedar?
I don't know, but it's very invasive.
Well, you're saying on the back.
On the invasive
On
list?
the-
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
They grow easily, they grow anywhere.
Okay, any other questions about the landscaping ordinance? Okay, so moving on to public safety, we will discuss a resolution declaring the town of White Bluff Fire Department equipment surplus property, and we have a kind of lengthy list here. At least 5 items, including the ladder truck, the tanker, one of the Crown Victorias that used to be a police car, I believe, back in the day. What is the 1981 Chevrolet? Anyone know?
You'll have a couple of pictures. That's the yellow, that's the old rescue truck.
Okay.
There it says the engine is a crate GM replacement with less than 250 miles. It runs and drives, but the transmission needs to be replaced.
Like Brian Hill did, with a sign on
All of this goes on GovDeals. You can go to govdeals.com.
Feel like they're going to end up in a parking lot.
Mayor, the 5th item on the list, the 95 AMC General, that's the big yellow military vehicle. And I do have, they don't call it a VIN number, but I do have an ID number for that, that you will have by Tuesday.
That's the Deuce and Porter, right?
Yes.
I didn't know it was a tanker, though.
It has a tank on the back.
think the one that I was questioning is the one that's marked 6-4, is, I believe that is the,
That's the old rescue vehicle. It's got, similar to like a, shaped similar to like an ambulance back, but it's just compartments for equipment.
We all laugh, that's a real possibility.
That'll be just a simple motion on the resolution on Tuesday.
Is there any other paperwork that's required of this in terms of not holding the town liable for anything?
No, because once you declare it surplus and it goes through the appeal process, because that's what everybody uses, you don't have to.
Okay.
Everything's as is on those.
Okay, so any other questions about the surplus equipment?
So this just pertains to vehicles and not equipment other than vehicles.
No. The surplus process,
Right.
everything should be declared surplus.
So I'm just curious if we had, old firefighting equipment that needs to go, and I guess that's another day.
Yeah, sometimes, Chief Vulture has brought non-vehicle stuff for y'all to declare surplus. It cycles through.
Okay, so next, under public safety, we're going to discuss the alcohol monitors and the GPS trackers that are used for court. Is there anything in the packet pertaining to that? No. Okay.
We have Linda.
We have a walking packet.
Judge may have some.
So, I have two things here. Yeah, that's the first one in there. So, I think I spoke a little bit about it, but, so 2 years ago, the legislature enacted a law that requires courts on DUI third offenses to use what's called a transdermal alcohol monitor. So it's a bracelet that's worn on the ankle that takes readings every 30 minutes to determine if someone has consumed alcohol. And it's commonly known as the SCRAM CAM, or SCRAM Continuous Alcohol Monitor, and that's kind of like Kleenex, right? For a long time, it was the only product out there. There's been some that's come and gone. Right now, really the only ones on the market are SCRAM CAM. There's a product called BI TAG that is kind of peaked and may still be in existence, but probably not for long. There's a product called a Buddy Alco Tag that is new to the market, and from what I understand, maybe being used by one provider, like probably 10 devices in the state at this point. It's still very early in their process. They're an international company. So SCRAM CAM is the transdermal monitor, and when they wrote that statute, it was kind of, if you read it, it fits all the technical things of SCRAM CAM, so it's like they designed that statute around the SCRAM CAM. And so on this list, you see two things, SCRAM GPS and SCRAM CAM, or continuous alcohol monitor at the bottom. So those products are available in two models, a rental model and a purchase model. And just to go over everything together. And so last year, the legislature enacted a law for GPS to be required on aggravated domestic assaults. So that would be domestic assaults that have serious bodily injury, use of a weapon, or strangulation. And so they're required to be used as a bond condition for those offenses, and to have a call center that will call 911 if there's a violation, and to have an option available for victim notification. And so the SCRAM CAM GPS that I've got outlined here meets those requirements. And from the outset, I want to make sure everybody understands, so I do work in this space, and where I work is in a middleman position. So we are a provider. So what we do is we go in and run programs for municipalities or counties. And what I've done here is cut out our company completely and got a quote from me from the manufacturer. So our company has no benefit whatsoever from this. So those are the technologies that are required under the law, GPS and conditional alcohol monitor, or continuous alcohol monitor. GPS, currently, we do have access to GPS through Mid-Cumberland, our probation provider. I think as far as this particular part of their regions, I think we might be the only one using their GPS. I think Humphreys County may use a little bit because, you know, most counties have a service provider in place and they're not servicing a lot here. They do some over in other parts of the state. Currently, I don't know that they do any alcohol monitoring. That hasn't really come up. We don't have a lot of DUI thirds, fortunately, so it hasn't come up. We had one person, I think, that needed one but never made bond, so it never had to have one. And for the GPS, we have been able to get that done with Mid-Cumberland. So what I've got here are prices on that, and kind of my thought, or what I would think you might want to consider is the going standard is $10 a day for devices. Providers generally charge an install fee. Some towns will charge an install fee, but $10 a day for the devices to the defendants. So the defendants are required to pay it by statute, and so they would be billed that fee. Luckily, Ms. Rogers has some background in this arena, and I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we kind of feel like with the current workload, we anticipate that she would be able to handle it, but if it became a big, huge program, then we would have to look at something different. Is that, you still kind of think that'll work? And so the prices are here of what the devices would run. So GPS, rental, or purchase. The renting of the devices, in essence, would be is $3.75, but $1 for Premier Call Center, which is basically required, and the Ally app, which is a victim notification, is another $1. So it would be $4.75 or $5.75, depending on if the victim opted into the victim app. So those would be the prices that the city would be paying if they were renting the devices. There's no upfront cost. What it means there by 20% shelf is, so if you had 5 devices that were out in the field, you could have one sitting in City Hall and you wouldn't have to pay a fee on it. But if you only had 2 devices, you're going to be paying every day for both devices, whether they're out in the field or not. But you would be paying the $3.75 rental fee. You would not be paying the extra $1 for the call center or the extra $1 for Ally, but it would cost you $3.75 every day. Under the purchase, the purchase price for GPS is $645 or $645. Has a $280 monitoring. And then you add both of those, so $380 and $480 would be the actual cost. So the 95-cent difference, and I'm not a mathematician, but I believe that's about 679 days to recoup the cost. So if you're thinking about, recouping that on the 90-cent difference, but if you're charging $10 a day, you recoup that cost a lot quicker and reduce that risk there. The Scram Cam, the alcohol monitor, it costs much more to monitor those. For the rental, it's $7.93 per day, again with a 20% shelf, and then it does have a 5% allotment for damaged or lost equipment. Again, you have to have quite a few on there before that makes really a big difference. And this Scram Cam purchase, that's 2 pieces of equipment, and I'll go back to what that is $1,809.99. The difference there is $227 a day, so again, it's 797 days, so we're just shy of 800 days. And what that is the Scram Cam is the monitor on the leg, and the WBS or wireless base station is like a modem in your home. So it takes the information, it uploads it to the system so it can be analyzed, rather than having them come in to the courthouse to be hooked up to a machine. There is an option of a wired base station with Ethernet that's a little bit cheaper per day, but then you have to, in essence, buy more equipment because you have to have some if they have internet or don't have internet. So I anticipated with what our needs would be that it would probably be best just to get a quote for wireless. So those are the quotes for Scram. We could seek out quotes from Buddy. you know, if we wanted to do that, or I guess we could put out an RFP if we wanted to go that route. My initial thoughts would be, you know, maybe we should purchase one or two pieces of each type of equipment to make sure we had control and had access to them. In my experience, you know, you can get devices in less than 5 days for sure, usually about 3 days. If you need more devices, you know, just simply, you know, call, you know, the Scram System sales and they'll be happy to, you know, ship you one. There are some reoccurring costs such as batteries that have to be changed in the cam bracelet or chargers with GPS. You know, most of that generally is charged, you know, if a charger is destroyed by a defendant, it's charged to the defendant. And then the second page you've got there, that tells you the difference between Premier and then Standard Services and Premier Plus. Those are all Scram terms. In essence, those are different things that they will do with their call center. Premier is what's going to be required by the statute. That kind of fits in the statute. Premier Plus could add some additional calls if we wanted them not only to call dispatch and White Book Police, if we wanted them to call, you know, Chief Vulture or additional resources. But generally, you know, I don't know if many places using those throughout the state. The programs, generally how they work for GPS, they'll generate alerts if someone goes somewhere they're not supposed to be, leaves somewhere they're supposed to be, removes the device, tampers with the device, or allows their battery to die. They will make a call to 911. Law enforcement can respond. The legislature last year also passed a law that allows the law enforcement to make an immediate arrest. So what that does is law enforcement can go out there and deal with most of the GPS alerts, you know, on the street if they're able to find them. Alcohol, it has to get processed through a system, and so it takes a little bit longer to get processed through. So generally, it comes from the prosecutor or somebody reviewing the reports and then filing a motion with the court. It's not, you know, an immediate arrest type situation. So that's kind of a general overview. I'm happy to try to answer any questions you may have. I should have most of the answers. I may not have all of them. And then, of course, as far as what the city wants to do as far as investment purchasing, any of that, that's not my wheelhouse, that's yours. So, you know, make that call.
Questions. I mean, it sounds about 2 years to recoup it costs without charging a defendant. Obviously, that would accelerate that. How frequent, I mean, here obviously as judge, how frequent would you use something like this for a defendant?
Well, so, you know, I would think the cams, you know, we may not use it very often, you know. Again, we don't get a lot of DUI thirds. And so they're required on DUI thirds. The magistrates are required to consider them on DUI seconds. That's kind of a strange statute. I don't know many that are written that way, but it's required that they consider using them on DUI seconds.
Excuse me, are you talking about like a second offense or third offense?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So if you've had 2 in 10 years or 3 in 10 years. The county uses them quite a bit on DUI seconds, but, you know, thirds are where they're mandatory. You know, so, you know, and that's kind of why, when I was thinking about it, I was like, you might want to buy one, that way you're not renting something for no reason, but then again, it goes back to, well, you know, how long do you rent it for no reason before, you know, so, and then with the GPS, those aggravated domestics, they come up much more frequently, it seems, and much more frequently all the time, it seems. But they do turn over very quickly. So those cases resolve much more quickly. DUI cases tend to take a long time because everybody wants to wait for their alcohol results, then wait for any drug testing results, so they may drag on in general session or in municipal court for a year or longer. So, you know, those are kind of those factors. As far as lifetime, I think you might have asked me about that last time a little bit. The life cycle, the Scram Cam hasn't had a new one in, you know, in very recent times, but I anticipate any new movements there will be to add a GPS component or a cellular component to the actual cam device to eliminate the need for a base station. But the actual cam device probably would still be, you know, is still going to be operational. It wouldn't be any changes to that. GPS, they have just recently rolled out a GPS, so I mean, I think in the last 6 months, I think, so I would say that's very early in the GPS life cycle.
That was gonna kind of be my question, if we purchased one, how often would we have to replace, other than if it had wore up or something like that, but.
So all the devices are warranted, so like the alcohol monitoring device, if it has some sort of malfunction, if it doesn't pass diagnostics, it's warranted. So they'll issue what's called an RMA, or request for merchandise return of merchandise authorization. And so that doesn't cost anything to have that repaired. The only times that generally that those have to be paid for is if someone floods the device, they submerge it underwater. It affects the fuel cell and its ability to determine if it comes in contact with alcohol, so then it has to be rebuilt. And that would be something that you could charge back to the defendant. I believe the statute allows you to actually charge them with vandalism, if they
Would you be able to tell that when it happens?
So the manufacturer, yes, they if you send one in for an RMA, so you request an RMA, if it's not functioning properly, they examine them, and they'll give you a full report of why they believe, pictures and documentation of why they believe that it's not warranted. Right, so if it's something that they believe is flooded, they don't want to pay to fix it, they're going to send you a report saying, here's why we
How
don't
quickly would you know that it's malfunctioning? Would you know right after that defendant has flooded it, or would it go through another 2 or 3 defendants before you realize?
No, generally you would know within 30 minutes, so it takes a test every 30 minutes, it runs a diagnostic every 30 minutes.
Okay.
I guess theoretically it's possible that you may not catch it, you may not catch it on the first time, but generally, yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You're in a unique position to where you know more about this product than we do, and you're the one that administers them. And what is your recommendation?
Generally, I'm comfortable with these products. I know that they meet the statutory, requirements. As a provider, we do test other equipment. We're currently testing a different GPS, and it's specifically for a couple of issues. One being battery life for work release programs, and some customer service stuff that one of the counties has requested. I don't feel like those are issues here. With work release, those GPS devices, they want to charge them as little as possible, so those devices get about a 5-day life because they're going in work release. They don't want them having cords in the jail to charge devices. And so they're like, we want the device that has the absolute longest battery life. And so that's one of the reasons we're looking at that for that program. As far as an everyday person, charging one every day for an hour and a half is probably not that, big of an issue. These are the products that we use, our company uses out there. As far as the alcohol monitoring, like I said, Buddy is the only one really out there on the market, and it's still very early. We have done some testing with that. We have never made a decision that we wanted to roll it out with our company doing that. So I guess that's
to be more direct. If we were to purchase these for you, you said 1 or 2. So what would your suggestion be? Because basically in my ears, I'm listening to my judge saying he needs a tool for his job, which I'm always going to be more inclined to be in favor of. So if we were to purchase these for you, what would you suggest? 1 of each, 2 of the GPS, 1 of the cam? Just trying to spitball.
I guess that's financial questions. It's hard for me to answer that. When I first started talking about this, I think I asked Jeff, I'm like, I don't know if I don't know $600, if that's a big deal or not, so, you guys all know much more about the financial than me. As far as what we would need, if we have one on the shelf, we're okay. If you install that one and, and you need one the next day, then what do you do, until you can get the next one? Do you tell the person, well, you're going to have to sit in jail and wait until we can get this piece of equipment in? So I guess I would say probably the safest thing it would be 2 of each. With the alcohol monitors and the frequency, I would say that was probably a pretty good bet that 1 would be enough there, because you can get them within a very, very quick turnaround.
There's not an extended lead time for them to be shipped?
No, ma'am. I've never had any issues getting those. And when we're ordering them, there's times when we're ordering 10, there's times when we're ordering 50 or more. And, they're able to turn those around usually pretty quickly. The only time there's any delays when they're turning around stuff that's RMA, but they, you know, they coordinate that pretty well as well. It's not, and you know, you can always purchase more at any time if you need to, so.
I would go with what Leonard said too, with the GPS. I'm like, I know somebody right now that's got one, that's an offender, that he's got one on. So the whole court process, you know, court got pushed a month, he's gotta wear it the whole time. He's gonna get found over, probably grand jury, he's gotta wear it the whole time. So it's possible that we would have one that would be out 3 or 4 months until that case is resolved. So I definitely recommend whatever we do, at least two of those, if not 3.
My brain was thinking 2 GPSs and 1 cam, but that's just where my brain was at. If cam's not gonna be used as much, that's the one, and it's the more expensive of the 2. But that's just where I was thinking.
He said that, with these devices, to recoup our costs, we can charge the offender a daily fee.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you should. Yeah, I mean, my opinion, but hands down, you should charge a daily fee. I think the law requires you to. It says the defendant shall pay for it. So I don't think the city should you know, take any, you know, cost on with it. You know, the rate for the CAM alcohol monitor is going to range between $10 and $12 in the state of Tennessee. I don't know that anybody's charging more than 12. Pretty universal that that's 10 across the state. There may be some places that may have a little bit lower rate, but that's going to be somewhere like Chattanooga or Knoxville that, you know, that have hundreds of devices, and so they were in a very competitive bid process whenever folks were bidding on those. And then as far as GPS, those prices vary wildly. You know, within the state, some folks charging up to $14 a day when the victim app is required. So, you know, I think my suggestion would be to just do it $10 across the board. You know, unless you felt like you needed to make
Does
it
that stand
higher.
true even like Brian said, if it's dragging on for a year, are we still charging that?
So, and Mayor, if I may, just a few things. So this is an unfunded mandate from the state. They said, you know, if certain offenses come up and they make bond, right? Like, they're sitting in jail, can't make bond, it's not an issue. If they make bond, this is a requirement with a couple of offenses and the consideration with another, DUI second. We have to be able to provide this if we're going to have a criminal court, right? So we have a criminal court, we've got to be able to provide this. The question for me, and I was going to ask is, you know, what's the accordion-like nature? Like, let's say we get 8 in a weekend, just very randomly. We can go order, for rental even, don't have to buy them. We can go get 6 more, and then can we turn those, once that's all washed out, we can go back to just renting 2? I mean, is there flexibility with all this?
There is. So there's no you actually, you call and request an RMA, just like you would if it was showing damage, and it'll be RMA return of rental, and they send you a label when you send it in, and that's the end of it.
So we can get it on a need-be basis.
Yes, sir.
And then the question becomes, do we want to rent or buy?
Right.
I guess that's something that we don't have to put this out for bid because of the amount. You know, this is to sort of the budget side. Yes, it's money, but it's required by the state. If we're mad about it, we can go talk to our legislators. But, you know, having at least a couple, even maybe rentals, where if we need to accordion up, we can. And, you know, I appreciate the judge coming to y'all for this initially, but this is really a court administration thing that's just going to be factored into its budget. And if a lot of the costs or some of the costs can be recouped by a daily fee, it's not really something y'all are going to see budget-wise make an impact, in my opinion. It is something we need to do, and this is the first time it's coming up, and we're kind of scrambling because we haven't had it often, but it's going to happen. You're going to have, especially talking to some criminal defense attorneys, them adding strangulation has resulted in a much higher number of charges for aggravated assault, domestic assault. So, we're gonna see them, and we have to be able to provide this, because we can't just hold someone in jail who has made bail, but we don't have the equipment. That creates a liability issue, in my opinion. So, we need something. There's, rental or purchase is gonna be kind of a big consideration, and obviously we go with the judge's recommendation, but that's kind of just, we're having this discussion on what should happen.
And they're not mutually exclusive, right? I mean, if you buy one, you can rent as many as you want, or you can rent as many, you know, you don't have to buy any, so. And again, I mean, I guess my thought on rental versus buy is, you know, don't put any weight on that. That's just me sitting thinking what to do. I mean, like I said, you guys are you know, the budgeting folks and handle the money, so whatever y'all think we need to do.
This is probably unrelated to the decision, because we have to have them one way or the other, but I'm just curious as far as, you know, the daily fee, what's the chance that we're gonna even get that money even if we set that daily fee? I mean, you know.
I mean, those programs, the collection rates on the programs vary, you know, based on demographics and several factors, but partly it varies based on the court, and how the court interprets the law about that. You know, some courts interpret it as they shouldn't be involved in that process, that the money is what it is, and that's not their concern. Other courts say, well, if you sign a contract as a condition of your bond that you're going to keep this device on, and you sign a contract with them that say once you get behind they can turn it off, then that is what it is, and if it's turned off, you're not in compliance with your bond. So, you know, those would be, you know, decisions to make as far as the contract that the town uses with any participants, and you know, there's a bunch of parts there, I guess, to figure out.
There's a lot of layers to this. This is one of those, like, the legislature said, we're gonna figure it out, right? Are you saying, Judge, it's a matter of, are we gonna consider it part of the court costs, or more it's like a town administrative thing?
I guess what I'm getting at, so, like, if we get someone that's behind, you know, according to our contract as a provider, then we send a notice to the court and say, this person is behind, we're asking to terminate them from monitoring, right? It doesn't make business sense for us to keep monitoring, because if you remember, if you look at it, you know, there's a monitoring fee, so this $375 for GPS, that's monitoring and equipment, and it's about 90 cents equipment, so you're paying $2.80 every day just to monitor them to the manufacturer. So if they stop paying, you're still paying that on them. And so...
Yeah, the town's paying the manufacturer,
correct,
right?
Correct.
And the town is then turning around and charging the wearer a certain fee, and if they stop paying the town, we're not stopping to pay the manufacturer, we gotta pay the manufacturer.
Correct. And so that would be up to the town to decide, okay, when are we gonna terminate, how many days before we terminate it? And then it would be up to the court to decide, okay, once it's terminated, what happens to this person? Do we modify the bond condition so you don't have to wear it anymore? Do we say, well, that's your bond condition, you have to go to jail? And I guess for the amount of guidance that'll help. I can't answer that particular question because then I'm telling you how I would rule before an issue that comes. Yeah, so, but those are the questions that come up, is how a judge would handle that.
So we could basically, as a council, if this is wrong, correct me, but we could, as a council, say, okay, you've got a 30-day window that if you don't pay your fee, that we're asking the court to cut it off. Can we do that as a council, or does that go into the...
We're bringing this up because it needs to be brought up, and that's all judicial branch stuff.
So we can't put any kind of, as a city, put any kind of limitation on the...
There are some things we can do. You know, so we did the court cost ordinance a while back. I haven't looked at this yet. I wanted to see what y'all wanted to do, because the contract we have and all that, we haven't even... it's cracking that open. But, you know, I could look at amending that and just saying, here's going to be town law on this issue. Now, it's up to the judge to enforce it or not, but y'all could put a law on the books.
I would really like, for my opinion, to at least do our part. And then if it doesn't go anywhere beyond us, then that's not on me. But as far as I'm concerned, you can't pay us. Why are we providing bond? Yeah, right. I agree.
And another way to think about this, the council does not have to be the body to decide purchase versus rental. honestly, that's a Mayor Dixie conversation, honestly. And sort of an overall budget, but, I think that just needs to be looked at. Obviously, the judge's recommendation is gonna be important, because he is, as Councilman Glover pointed out, he's uniquely knowledgeable in this area compared to almost every other judge. And which is why he had to jump through hoops to be able to do this for ethics reasons and not involve his company. But, yeah, I guess that's really the question is, what do y'all want to set as the rental per day that we're charging, whether or not we're renting or purchasing? Because that really shouldn't change that number for us. I think y'all need to pick, and you've already heard his recommendation, $10 a day across the board. And then really that would be granting Dixie and the administration the ability to get what's needed. And you're talking about a few $1,000s, or if you rent, they could be sitting on the shelf for a while. So it just depends, and that'll probably require further conversations outside this meeting. But I think that's where the council should lean. If y'all are comfortable with all you've heard, we have to do it. So it's like, I want your input, but we have to do it. Is what amount do you want to set? And I'll go draft it. We won't have it for Tuesday, but we can have it for the next month.
So we're not gonna vote on, we as a body are not gonna vote on purchase versus rental. That's not, we're just gonna set the per day fee.
I think that's appropriate, because
Okay.
again, it should be the mayor and
Okay.
Dixie kind of, and working with the judge, figuring out, like if he says, hey, I'm getting one a month, they're going to need to buy some more, right? It's one of those things you can't predict, and I think you need some inventory. I think it's what the judge is trying to tell us. We have to have something. And if the need comes up for more, because that means people are using it, and they're going to get that daily fee, and, not that it pays for itself, but the goal would be for it to be as cost neutral as possible, right?
So does the council determine the length of time when someone's unable or doesn't pay the monitoring fee? Does the council determine what that cutoff is, or is that the judge?
I need to look at that. Judge will definitely enforce it. I need to figure out if we're going to make it part of that law change, if y'all want to proceed with that, because y'all don't have to.
I would just like to equip him as far as the law with everything he needs to use for his discretion.
Well, we won't even vote on that, but the per day, I mean, we could maybe put the time limit and the
Grace period?
Yeah, that.
How many days?
In my opinion, it's like 2 days.
And there's there's several things in the participation agreement you'll need, and I can send.
I assume you have examples.
Yeah,
We're not going to start from scratch.
to Mr. Mills, such as charging the GPS, just those things, so that if they do come to court, they can't say, well, I didn't know I had to charge the GPS, I thought it just worked forever, things like that.
I guess what we
so
need to
that I do
do,
have
like
what I need to.
Tuesday, do we need to vote on these two things as a package? The per day fee and the time limit set on how long they could go without pay.
Well, I'll defer to the mayor, but the way I saw this discussion tonight was kind of giving us an idea, because if I'm going to have to draft the law, it'll have to be next month.
Right.
April, next month, March, but, yeah. I don't think this will be on the agenda Tuesday, unless
Okay,
it
gotcha.
needs to be.
That's what I'm trying to get straight in my head.
Yeah, it's more, this is information for y'all on kind of this change that's happening.
Okay.
But it sounds like y'all want X per day and some grace period, and then y'all can debate it and modify it when it comes up. Yeah, okay. And then that would be, we would have to work on the other aspects of this.
So I have a comment relating to rental versus purchase. The GPS on the people purchasing for our inventory, from what the judge said, I would lean more towards rental of the Scram Cam until they have an updated version, because I hate buying a piece of equipment and it's outdated, so he
I
has.
can ask and see if there's some horizon out there, of, hey,
Right.
we're working on it, and there's a,
I mean, you have some,
the-
you know, internal knowledge that we don't, and you're able to get it, so, I mean, just like the Judge said, the GPS rental has recently been updated, but the Scram has not, so I would lean towards renting the Scram until the updated version and then purchasing.
The only thing I would add on top of that is we don't even know if they're working on an updated version. His guess was just that they might add GPS into it, so.
I can ask, I mean,
I
I
mean,
can
we
certainly
can
ask
ask.
him, and he may, I mean,
My
you know,
point is, we don't know if
he'll-
we're 2 years out from an update or 20 years. I mean, we're probably not 20, but
You
you
can
know.
have him by Tuesday, you can have an answer, you know.
But again, we aren't even gonna be a part of that decision.
But you can certainly make your thoughts known.
Yes.
Running now.
Yeah, it's just come down to numbers and frequency of use. I mean, if we get one over the course of the next 12 months, you just have to look at the numbers, see what makes more sense, because sometimes buying it and letting it sit on the shelf may be cheaper than paying that rental per day when it's not used, and that will have to be looked at.
That would be recouped. If it sits on the shelf without being used and charged to an offender, you said about 2 years, we recoup that cost of it just sitting on the shelf over renting it for 2 years.
It has to be on somebody to get the recoupment, so.
Well, my point is renting it for 2 years.
Oh, yeah,
Versus
versus
purchasing it, and in both cases, it sits on the shelf. We'll have broken even about 2 years.
Yep.
Now, of course, if we get an offender, that would accelerate.
Correct. Thank you. We'll be in touch.
Okay, so nothing on the agenda currently for streets and sidewalks, parks and recreation.
Mayor, the only Parks and Rec thing, 6 PM Tuesday night, we're in essence having a park board meeting here in this room. The reason for that meeting is to discuss the nature park. It's a grant requirement, but at the end of that meeting, there will be time for public input. So if anybody has any comments or anything about that, that's another opportunity for the public to weigh in.
So you expect it to take less than 45 minutes to do all that?
Yeah.
Then we're gonna talk about beer.
Okay, so nothing currently under old business. Under new business, we are looking at the White Bluff social media policy. And you have in your packet, a concern has come up about that. And behind that, we do have, is this the current social media policy that's in the packet?
It's actually a part.
Or part of it?
There's the cell phone usage is part of that as well.
There's a second part of it, I think that's listed, but I'll email it.
Okay.
There's an external and an internal
Okay.
differentiation I can kind of highlight in a little bit.
Mayor, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So as the mayor said, I guess this is on here for 2 reasons. Number one, we do have a local business owner that feels he has been slighted, and he wants to address the council about that on Tuesday. And in order to do that, and us to be compliant with state law, it does need to be germane to the agenda. So we did add this to the agenda to allow him to sign up under the public comment section, and he'll address his complaint. The second reason is we adopted this policy in 2017. And while it was comprehensive then, it could use some updating. But to tell you a little of how we got here. When we did our Facebook page, the Town of White Bluff Facebook page, and if you'll notice, the second page that I gave you is to just show you that myself and David Martin are the only administrators to that page. David Martin is no relation to me. I always feel like that. No relation. But anyway, David has worked with us on the website, and different aspects of getting the word out. So he was involved in that. That's why he's on that list. But this is all me. This is all of me, good, bad, or indifferent. But in the policy at the time, and I'm not going to read it to you, but when we first adopted the policy, it says to provide communications in a timely manner about town use, emergencies, road closures and construction, parks and rec programs, job opportunities, government services, holiday closings, weather alerts, whatever. And that's how we used the page. I mean, we used the page solely as a communication method to get the word out about something town related. Then COVID hit, and my economic development hat comes out, and businesses are closing, folks are at home, people are nervous, businesses are suffering. And I felt like anything the town could do to help promote our local business would be a good thing. Having said that, it wasn't something that I spent a lot of time on. So if I was out putting a meeting agenda out or something like that, and I saw where a business was having an event or anything, if it seemed like something that if the town could get that word out, it would help that business. That was the 100% sole intent of what I was doing. But like I said, it wasn't something that I could or did spend a lot of time on. And could he have a legitimate complaint? Maybe. I don't know. I know that there are also pages that when you see a posting, and I'll tell y'all, I'm not a Facebook expert at all, but when you see a Facebook posting and you try to share it, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Now that's probably something on their side in terms of privacy and that kind of thing. Did I try to get in touch with them and say, hey, you need to fix this so we can do this? No, I didn't. You know, there's other businesses that I know for a fact they don't have a Facebook page, so you can't share anything. I guess what I'm trying to explain is that I believe, based on what's happened, and now that things are better in terms of COVID and that kind of thing, we need to just go back and use the page the way it was intended, and put agendas out, put weather delays or things like that people need to know. And I need to stay out of the economic development part on that page. It may be something that we want to develop something down the road and go a different path, but in terms of the Town of White Bluff page, I think we need to get back to basics and do what we started out doing. I would ask, I mean, now that we have this, please read it. Please make suggestions if you want to see it updated. I think that would be very appropriate. If you would authorize other administrators to the page, I'm fine with that. So anyway, that's my spiel on that. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
And Mayor, if I may, I'll just add, the need for social media policy started happening pretty intensively in the mid-2010s because some people who had access to government pages were going rogue. So you can see on here, you know, in the external section, you know, no nudity or pornography, no animal cruelty. You know, you have to kind of list those things out. But just right, I mean, the way these are designed to communicate government business. Now, is the government in the business of promoting economic development? Absolutely. But I think Jeff's point's well taken in that if this body wanted to see a greater push for economic development, that would probably need to be separated out into a different arm, right? Not the Town of White Bluff Facebook account. And there are some things we need to update. It has been, wow, 8 years now.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And there are some things we've done elsewhere that, if it's the will of the council, we can certainly update this, but really, before we dove into that, we wanted to know the council's kind of overall direction and like are you comfortable with what Jeff said, or let's get back to basics, or do you want to see something more, or you have any other questions?
My fear is that if we set up, right now Jeff's the administrator, if we set a whole bunch of administrators, we'll end up with a page like Hip White Glove, and that does not convey the town's image.
Well, the administrator has to be a member of the town of White Bluff government. So that's and the way this is currently set up is that there's one point of contact, one administrator per site, because it was contemplating multiple sites. And you could have a crossover, but there's one person who's ultimately responsible. The other big reason, just so you all know, because as public records come into play and all that, there was a concern about if people are violating content policy, which we don't really address it that way, and developments in the First Amendment have limited our ability. But basically, if something that's wildly out there needs to be taken down, we have a process in here of documenting it, because once it's posted, it's a public record, right? That's the way state law reads. So if someone did post, say, a nude image, we would take that down. But we would also preserve it in case that ever came up for litigation purposes or whatever, because there was a period of time, again, in the 2010s where the administrator or administrators would just delete comments they didn't like, and that became an issue. So you kind of have to let everybody say their piece on, no, we don't get that. The meeting's at 7 tonight, it doesn't generate a lot of, controversy, but that was, so it's designed to also preserve our responsibility under the Public Records Act, that if we did have to delete something, we have a way of preserving it. Though I don't think we've ever had to delete something, so it's nice.
That's not that argument.
So, I mean, I'm a bit polar on it, but I agree with Jeff's point in regards. I think on what either we're going to be in it or not, but if we're going to be in it, we need to be fair. Or just not be in it. Now, if we're going to be in it, I take Jeff's point, and because, like I said, I know social media firsthand from our businesses, it can be a whole can of worms. I know the prior administration and myself had talked at one point about having something, not exactly, that way we're not using the same terms, but similar, like a chamber of commerce, but just something in some sort of entity in White Bluff, government-wise, that was trying to help with the networking and the promotion of our economic businesses, and that's something we loosely talked about. Now, whether that needs to be an entirely different board or not, or if it could be lumped into, say, the Parks and Rec, because I know that's going to be another conversation I'm going to bring up here in a second. But then maybe then it could be a highlight of the week. Of this week we're highlighting this business for White Bluff, and this week and you could actually have your week that you're supposed to send in your stuff. If you don't, too bad. If you do, then we'll put your highlights on there of your business. Like I said, I'm very polar of going either do it or don't, but if we do it, we need to be fair about it, and where that burden of responsibility and workload needs to sit is another question.
I agree with Carl. I think, I've had a conversation with Trey. I get along fine with Trey. He rents from me. We don't have any issues. Whether or not his is shared as much as others may or may not be so, I've not looked into that. But I do feel, at this point, it would be easier just to stick with just the city, like Jeff recommended, just the city business for that particular page. That way there's no misconception or fact that you feel that you're being mistreated in any way. But I also agree with you, we should have maybe down the road a separate entity that perhaps does promote, and that'd be a whole separate thing from the city, and that's just, I just think that would be much easier and much cleaner, from this point.
Well, again, you can create an economic development plan.
Right.
The county's done it. The city of Dixon's done it. White Bluff hasn't had cause to do it, but if that's the will of the, that's not something you can turn around in a week. That's a layered approach that would need to work its way through the process, but it's not a bad thing to do. And it can be separate from, my only concern with your proposal is that still, if you're going to allot space right on the town page, what if there's more applicants than, weeks? So Well, if you get 53 applicants, you leave someone, you're back to the same problem. But if
I think we have over 52 businesses in White Bluff.
you'd be surprised.
I bet you already have.
So,
Well, that's good.
There was a number that blew me away, and I know it's not White Bluff, but, you know, when downtown Dixon was revitalizing and putting in their sidewalks and all that, they did a survey before that, of how many businesses are actually located in, you know, in some form use Main Street in Dixon, and it was over 450. And you look at it and you're like, oh, there's like 30 businesses here. No, there's way more. You'd be surprised where stuff gets stuck. So, I think it's possible that you would run out of spaces. So again, I would encourage y'all, it's a good problem, right? You want to have 400 or 500 businesses. It needs to be a separate arm that has its own policies set by, you know, what a couple jurisdictions have done recently is they put together an economic development plan, and then like the Parks Board, they have an economic development board that just makes recommendations. So like they're dealing with it most of the time, and if they need your approval for something or whatever, they come to you, you know. That's part of the town's growth, and you'll get there someday when you're ready, but that's, I think Jeff's economic development background kicked in, like you said. And just for clarity, Jeff, I think you told me this. Has anyone ever asked for you to share their business that you've been denied?
Oh, no.
Did the business at issue ever ask for you to share their business?
No. No, not until the email of January 19th.
And I'll be honest with you guys, you know, with Patrick, I don't know how many times he has or has not, or if he ever has. I'm like him, I'm not on Facebook enough to know. And so, but I think it makes it a lot cleaner if it's just not expected at all across the board. That way.
With our business, we never, I don't know either, because I've never expected it to go.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Well, and if the town Facebook page looks more like, you know, y'all passed a policy for the sign out here. If they're kind of more in harmony and just like, here's government information, that makes sense. It does.
Yep.
And we can, it's not perfectly spelled out in this policy, so that's something we want to make a little bit more robust and clear, so that way it's not.
I would just a glance over, I would probably remove job opportunities from it, because that gets into the economic world. But that's just my two.
Well, when we post them, you know, so if we.
Oh, other than our job opportunities?
Our job.
Yeah.
Okay, that was vague for me on that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, technically McDonald's is always hiring, I'm pretty sure. We just have a running ad of McDonald's hiring.
So is this something that we have to vote on Tuesday, or just say this is what we have to?
I think some direction on Tuesday would be appropriate after discussion, and then we can bring something back in the next couple of months.
Well, I have a suggestion about the town of White Bluff page, something as simple as a business directory, and that's it. Don't promote them, just a business directory.
So we actually had that page on our website. And it oddly became hard to manage. Businesses came and went, addresses changed, phone numbers changed, contact information changed. It got to be kind of a hassle, and we basically took that off of the website.
That might be a good addition to the deal if it was on the phone.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I was thinking it's a stopgap measure until
I got
the economic development, because I think that's an excellent idea, like Chamber of Commerce, like Carl was saying. I think that would be.
I mean, that's literally what a Chamber of Commerce does.
Yeah.
It's a repository for all businesses in that jurisdiction.
So maybe that it wouldn't have to be managed in such an official capacity as the town.
Well, I have a question. We are members of the Chamber of Commerce. Is that not something they can do for us?
Well, I haven't looked, but I would hope most businesses in White Bluff are on the Chamber of Commerce page.
I personally, it's just me, y'all can crucify me, but I would personally like us to have our own, because I feel like it would be more focused on White Bluff, because we're growing, we got a lot more to offer now. I feel we've kind of, overstepped accept our need for somebody to do it for us, even though I do think.
That's kind of my point. We're a member of the chamber, but I don't see a whole lot of stuff
Thank you.
about that. I mean,
And
it's-
I agree.
The businesses and this is not meant as a criticism, but the businesses I know of in White Bluff that are a member, they haven't seemed to have received too much return on investment from it, so.
I think the chamber only promotes businesses that are actually members of the Chamber of Commerce.
But even the ones, like Carl said, they're not getting the same recognition.
Yeah, there's, not to get in the weeds, but there's definitely some like City of Dixon bias, you know,
Yeah.
because that's where the chamber is.
Well, that's why I'm no longer a member. I was in my business at first, and they came, talked a good game, and after that, it's like, why am I spending this?
I was the city's representative on the board for 2 years, and I stopped because I was wasting my time. I mean, it was just a waste of my time, it's a waste of our money, I think.
Well, and candidly, if you go to any county and you talk to their Chamber of Commerce, they're almost always geared towards whichever the largest city is. I mean, that's just.
And I absolutely understand that. I don't take, any kind of disrespect from that. I just feel like if we had our own, it would be a lot more productive.
And I think there would be benefit just for the businesses and White Bluff helping each other out.
Well, this is something we're gonna have to allot some money for in the budget.
Not necessarily. So I'll share, we're wrapping up a new economic development plan for another jurisdiction. I can share that just so y'all can see what it looks like. The money would go towards creating the plan, because you usually get an outside consultant. What you do with that is kind of up to you. If you want to create a, advisory board like the Parks Board like I was talking about, that doesn't really cost anything. You're just asking people to serve. And if they come up with ideas that need resources, then you would have to, you need to be in the budget or small enough that it can just be approved administratively. But it depends on what you're going for. And then an actual White Bluff Chamber of Commerce is not part of the local government. That's its own nonprofit that's sitting out there. And you would need buy-in from local businesses. And that has to be its own thing separate from government. Like Williamson County's is Williamson Inc. That's what their Chamber of Commerce is. And the same comments, they favor Franklin and Brentwood and leave the other jurisdictions like Fairview and Nolensville not quite as loved. So,
Well, I hate to throw another responsibility to Jeff Lapp, and I would rather have somebody who would be able to focus more on that.
well, I could get into a conversation, especially with the mayor, about positions with the town, but I think you would want to have developed an economic development plan first, and then it'll tell you what your needs are, and then you can make a decision as a council of like, hey, here's what this is. So that would be step one for me, and let me gather some information that I have and send y'all, and you can be thinking on it. But again, that's a slow burn. I'm talking like this time next year, you may be looking at something to vote on, to adopt, right? Like that is not a quick process.
So would it be possible to have a city employee that does both the city Facebook page and the economic development page?
It's possible.
And also, the associated web page, not just Facebook, and maybe, Instagram page, and on, an X page. That would be kind of interesting.
Just go out and check just the Dixon County Economic Development. They have a couple people who are just working on that all the time. Now, they're also looking at, hey, there's a manufacturing thing, and they work behind the scenes to kind of get that in the right position to be presented, and that's a little bit more, not quite what I imagine White Bluff would be going for, but in terms of promoting existing businesses, that's one side of economic development. The other side, and Jeff, please weigh in, is bringing new businesses to the jurisdiction. It's promoting what's here and bringing in new. That's the balancing act of any economic development plan. Now, how you do that is based upon, what's your demographic, what's your geography, what are you close to, all that. So.
Okay, So just a reminder, we do have the beer board meeting on Tuesday prior to the council meeting, so it will be at 6:45. Anything else? Yes. Okay.
Well, no, my turn to be an I'm on. So I just had a question, because we had mentioned once before, or literally from the last special, we would like to readdress the billboards policy for across White Bluff, and we just wanted to revisit that, maybe send over a recommendation to the planning to see what they thought, and so I just wanted to see, because I didn't see that on the agenda, so I was wondering when we were going to tackle that.
I don't know if did we talk after the meeting about that? So there are legal issues with outright banning something.
Okay.
I'll just put it out there. And the reason what you saw drafted the way it was to protect the town.
Okay.
If you want to see something more stringent, happy to have a discussion about that. But there is U.S. Supreme Court law out there where jurisdictions got into pretty big trouble on outright banning billboards.
Okay.
In fact, it involved someone who wanted to put up a big I Love Jesus billboard in California, and they just banned all billboards, and then you get a First Amendment problem, and billboards are not banned in White Bluff.
Gotcha. They just have their location.
They just have their location.
Fair enough.
So quick question, what if you redefine the billboard size limit to 2 by 2?
That helps. And we kind of did that, right? So recall, nothing over 12 feet tall
Right.
and nothing exceeding 100 square feet is allowed on this corridor,
But
number one. And nothing over that size is allowed within 1,000 feet of a residentially zoned
what if
property.
we don't like that size and we think that's way too large for the definition of billboard?
If you want to explore something smaller, that's, yes.
Okay.
I have a question about that term corridor. Does that mean property that has a physical address on this road or is visible from this road?
It would be any parcel that is on 70. However small it is.
So, I mean, if you went over to Park Street, and somehow found a space without 1,000 feet of a residential area, you could put one up there.
But it can only be 12 feet tall.
Sure. I'm just, it's
Well,
still.
you can put it anywhere. You could do a full-on billboard if you're not on 70 in this from
Right.
Bluff Road to Burns Road, and you're where the billboard sits is not within 1,000 feet of the edge of a residential zone property. Yes, you put up a full billboard if you want, but that's not where billboard companies want to be. They want to be on
Right.
So,
Right.
but you could.
That's just my question.
You can put a
What is
in the middle of your
What is
field.
the definition of this corridor? Okay.
Yeah.
If we get into, like Brian's wanting to shrink it, do we start cutting into the businesses' signs?
So we had a brief discussion about that, and the business section, I don't recall from memory, the business section was different, but we did put size limitations overall, right? So that was part of let's go back to the corridor. The business signs are automatically limited because of it to 12 feet tall and 100 square feet in face size, right? So it wasn't impinging upon business signs yet.
But I guess what I'm saying is if we start shrinking what we would consider a billboard, is that going to,
It could.
that's,
Well, and if I did that, or if I suggested that, I would say this doesn't apply to a business sign. It's only an advertisement billboard sign that you would lease space on, and it would be, this is the biggest you can make it. So build it if you want to.
Yeah, there are some regulations out there that give more, I guess, to, if it's about the business where the property is, right? Like where the billboard's located, if it's about that business, you get more, but that actually was one of the cases where they got into trouble, because then you get into content regulation, again, because people will pick things that incite a lot of emotional response. However you're personally situated, because it's not just the business, and they want to put up a sign that's not business related. And now you're saying, no, only business, and then you get into First Amendment problems again. Yeah. I know, it's a wild area. A lot of signs, especially when you get the political signs. Like Tennessee passed a law a couple of years ago that said, you know what? everybody gets one sign per candidate or issue, and no one can stop that, right? So, you can have 80 signs in your front yard, but it has to be 80 different things, which is kind of absurd, but yeah.
My other question is, we had talked a while back about dadu structures, and then we have not brought that back up to revisit it.
Planning in March.
Planning March, beautiful. And, sorry, like I said, I'm just not trying to be a pain in the butt. The other thing was clarity on the consent. I know you said you're going to be penning an agreement with the Bombers coming up, but I know my hope was to get more clarity on what that rental agreement looks like and the duties of both the town and the tenant, so to speak, because my gut feeling and the interactions that I was feeling from all the people we've talked about in the last situation with the Little League was it seemed as though, this is all seeming, just to be very fair, that the representatives of the town were frustrated because it seemed like Little League wasn't doing enough, and then Little League seemed frustrated because they felt like the town wasn't doing enough, and so everybody was angry. And so I just wanted to have more black and white on the duties and responsibilities of who is actually doing what, paying for what, because right now it's just going to, well, see, we paid for this. Well, that's not, and a lot of that hasn't been put in black and white on who is supposed to be paying for X, Y, Z, and I just wanted more of a clear rental agreement in that.
So I am meeting with the Parks Director next week when we can establish a time and the members of the Bombers, so we can lay all this out to eliminate any confusion going forward.
And don't forget, there was an existing 2007 agreement.
Oh, no, I understand.
Yeah, so that did outline a lot of this. So.
Some of it, yes.
But hopefully, whatever comes out of that, we'll just put into this agreement, because everybody agrees.
It needs to be broken down into smaller digestible sections, because when you say things like, what's the town's responsibility to maintain the fields, and then the Little League says, no, we're the ones maintaining the fields, what exactly are you talking about when you say maintaining the fields?
What is it?
Yeah.
Just, yes. And then who, like, because in my brain, if we're basic, because in my brain, again, I'm simple, keep it simple, stupid, right, is we're basically the landlords, we are having tenants, and if the tenants are in charge of it, there should be a sign going, hey, you have a problem with this bathroom, call the tenant, he's the one who's in charge of it, he's just renting the space, that's my brain work. Again, oversimple, but I was just hoping for more clarity to come out, so I'm happy to hear that. The other thing I was wanting to talk about was the sober living. I know that's been a big topic of discussion, and I know we've talked quite a bit. I've talked with, I went to the City of Dixon meeting that they had, spoke with their legal as well as ours, and I understand there's quite a bit of red tape things that we can't do in regards to that, but I am actually researching two different topics, which I know I'll talk with you, Andrew, on one that they've done in Alabama, which is they've passed a law in Alabama in several jurisdictions. I don't know if our state would prohibit us from doing that, but it has to do with addressing how many people that were unrelated could live under one house, and that was an indirect way of going about it. Again, I don't know if we could do that in our state, but the other thing I was wondering if we could do in our state is, I've done work in a lot of these facilities, and one of the biggest problems with these facilities is people just walking off from them, and now you have a homeless issue on your street because they basically just walked off. And the way that some towns have handled that is they just tightened the punishments coupled with street camping. So instead of just moving along, because I know we already have some things on the books making it illegal for people to pitch a tent in the park, they basically just put a heavier punishment attached to that. And even so much on the West Coast as to go so far as to ban them from the town, that if they ever got caught in the town again, even with a speeding ticket, they went to jail. I mean, just basically make the punishment very, very strict, going, hey, if you're going to be in our town, you're not going to become a vagrant, so to speak. So I know that was a way of handling some of because they couldn't, with the ADA and the HIPAA and everything, they couldn't handle it from that end of the spectrum. They were kind of handling it from the back end. So I don't know if that's something that we could do as well, but it was something I was hoping that we could at least look into.
So those are all state regulations. They're not at the municipal level.
Okay.
Yeah, and to your first point on that one, state law says 8 people is the maximum per dwelling unit, and we can't do a nuclear family thing. That's been tried.
That's been tried. Yeah. Okay.
No, it's very clear.
And so that's our state that's carrying it. Because like I said, there's multiple local municipalities that pass that in my hometown.
Now, Tennessee passed a law that says up to 8 per dwelling unit. So,
Who enforces if there's 30 in the dwelling unit? Whose job, is that our job as a city?
that would fall to us if they were over that.
Gotcha.
But colloquially, they're sticking to 8 because they know they have the state law protection.
Well, like,
But if they're not, then
and this isn't
bring
in
it
our
up.
city, this is in a different city, so it doesn't apply to us, but I know there's a residence with 3-bedroom septic, 30 people living there right now. The problem is, how do you know, one, there's 30 people there, and how do you get access to the property to even enforce the code? I mean,
Administrative warrant.
gotcha.
And what dictates the living, you know, you have to stay there 7 days a week.
Do you consider it your residence?
Well, I mean,
You know, you can have multiple homes, but you can only vote in one place, like what's your primary sort of thing, so.
well, that's why, like, if there's nothing else, then can we tighten up on the screws on people who are basically camping on the street? And in conjunction with that, because I know recently, people that were camping, like, in our laundromat. And that was difficult because you have basically quite a few homeless people camping in a laundromat. The owner said he didn't care. And so the police were like, well, it's private property, what can I do? Well, can we look at it from a perspective of you are taking up residence in a non-residential place?
That is actually a heavily litigated federal issue.
Let's step in those.
Well, exactly what's, and we'll talk more about this, and I do want us to be careful about discussing too much that's not on the agenda. You know, we talked about that at the training. But obviously, any one of y'all can ask to add something to an agenda. But I'm just saying that's a layered issue. It's something that can be looked at. Especially if there's a warehouse down the road that has 100 people in it, like, that's illegal. You know, there are ways of dealing with it. But yes, private property, it gets into some interesting areas. There's a famous case out of Akron that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court relatively recently, where they had the back of the store had a homeless camp in it, and it was actually doing well and was supported, but the city council got nervous and disbanded it. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there.
Right. So I'm just asking, because even in my own business, you know, we've got a lot of little girls, and we've got a few instances of, I guess the best definition would be vagrants that were taking their residence right next to us, and there wasn't anything we could do, except to walk our students out. And so, again, I would just like to look at something that we can do legally.
Give me a little time, and let me talk to Jeff and Amanda and the mayor, and maybe I can kind of put some information together. So at least you know, the council knows. I mean, this is a topic that's coming up constantly, right? I think it's important for you all to know the framework of, hey, you can't mess with this area, or this is something you could look at, and if you did, what would you want it to look like, you know? A lot of it's going to be discretionary with that, but yeah, okay.
I'm done.
So just to be clear, you're not expecting anything on Tuesday's agenda?
I didn't know what I was expecting.
Okay.
Maybe not, but he said he needs some time. I'm just asking. I'm just work session. I'm running my mouth.
Yep.
Yeah, the agreement for the park, that'll be with the mayor and me, drafting what she comes back with in conjunction with the bid documents. We talked about billboards, happy to discuss more, but yeah, it seems like none of that needs to be on the agenda.
Fair enough.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff.
I know I sound like a broken record, but I'd really like to discuss the litter issue that we have around here. I don't know if there's ordinances to enforce or who enforces them, if they're directed toward the property owner, even though, you know, sure the property owner's not throwing beer cans out in his front yard, but I'd really like to do something about that.
I don't know if this is a good time to point it out or not, but Mr. Frizell has mentioned that he would like to retire at some point in his life.
He's 77 in March.
He'll be 77 next month. We do have a position that we're currently advertising for a combination of codes inspector and codes enforcement. We're gonna try to lump that into one full-time position. And we have received a couple of applications for that, so that is in progress. And I think that we would like to see the enforcement aspect being used more within the town.
And excuse me, Mayor, you mean property codes too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Is that what you're,
Little cars.
is that what you're getting to, or just talking about a litter campaign in general?
Whatever it takes, I would
Okay.
just like to have some discussion on
Yes.
all facets of the issue.
Don't forget, the middle school gave you an idea a little bit ago too.
But,
Yeah, nothing came of the, I mean,
well, but, you know, I don't see much littering on 70, it's mostly in residential streets.
but we have to start someplace. And they wanted to start with town, in the downtown area.
I mean, a campaign with, you know, have signs that, you know, White Bluff, keep White Bluff clean, you know, something like that, just to keep it in people's minds that, you know, littering is an offense. I mean, but I would just like to have some discussion about it. If nothing becomes of it, then that is what it is, but.
Okay. If there's nothing else, then we will adjourn. Thank you all.
Don't forget, actual littering is a violation of state law, so start writing some tickets for it. Steve, this is.
I think